Welcome to our video on pedagogical documentation and using Google Keep. This project is a collaboration between Business and Learning Technologies and the EarlyYears team of Curriculum Services. We collect information for many different purposes and in many different ways in our kindergarten classrooms in order to help make the thinking and learning visible. Google Keep is one tool that can help us collect, store, and annotate the learning we see every day. We can use it to record an audio note or type out learning stories, and even pair those stories with photographic or video images. We can leverage our documentation to support our assessment for, of, and as learning. The data we collect can direct the types of provocations or materials we make available, the way whole or small group learning is conducted, and the support provided for individual students. So that's assessment for learning. Learning stories that you collect can support the completion of the initial observation and the communication of learning, our assessment of learning. You can share images or stories with students to provoke reflection or deeper learning. Assessment as learning.
The OCDSB has a signed agreement with Google and D2L, which means that if all the content, photos, videos, stories, audio recordings are stored on Google Drive or the OCDSB D2L environment, there's no need for additional parental consent. Before using a third-party app, like Seesaw, educators need to review the privacy agreement with their principal to see what data is being collected, where will it be stored, and how will it be used, to see if they can use the app and if they need additional parental consent. The OCDSB is currently developing a D2L portfolio tool that will soon be available. Stay tuned. Today we will look at one app, Google Keep, which is part of the Google Suite, so no additional parental consent is needed. You can download Google Keep for your phone, iPad, and tablet. In a web browser, you can access it through keep.google.com. The first step in setting up your Google Keep for PedDoc is creating your labels. First, create one label for each student. For example, here I have labels for Ahmed, George, Jason, Letitia, Sarah, and Susan. I create a new label by clicking on Create New Label, and then I write the name of my student. And then I can click Done. After you have all your students entered, you can enter other labels that could be useful in classifying or to help you revisit your notes later. These categories can be the times of your day, for example, building time, transitions, outdoor learning, whole group learning, or the 4 frames. When creating a note on a Chromebook or your PC computer, simply click on Take a Note. When using an iPad or a phone, you can start a note also by clicking Take a Note, but you do have additional options. If you want to dictate a note or record an audio file of a student, you have to click on the microphone first. You cannot add an audio file once you've started writing a note. You do have to do it at the start. To add a picture, which you can do first or after you have started writing a note, you click on the camera. Using a portable device allows you to use the device's camera and to take pictures that are stored directly in your drive.
We would like to draw your attention to the placement of the Observe, Document, and Analyze labels on the PedDoc cycle. It is important to remember that when we are sitting in observation of our students, we are recording what we see and hear without analysis or filter. This enables us to see the learning that is occurring, instead of the learning we might like to see. This is an important distinction when we remember the asset lens that growing success is asking us to apply to all of our assessment and evaluation practices. Think about remaining in a neutral mind frame during the observation stage. Once the story is saved in a note, we can revisit it later to think about the learning we observed and think about how it fits into our 4 frames, our curriculum document, or our goals or hopes we may have for that specific child. And then we can think about what to do next.
Let's create a note for Susan. I'll click on Take a Note, and I'll add a picture, this time from my drive. Then I can fill in my note by writing my story, and I'll add a title. We recommend that you use the date of the story because it makes it easier to find it later and to track student progress.
Susan wanted to break her Play-Doh ball in half. She tried to use her fingers to separate the two halves. The ball kept flattening out under the pressure from her fingers. Letitia watched Susan struggle to halve her sphere. After a few minutes, Letitia went to the shelf and got the plastic knife and offered it, without words, to Susan. Susan took the knife and began cutting the balls in half. This note represents an example of the observe and document stages of the PedDoc cycle. Lots of learning is evident in the description of this interaction. However, the author attempted to save any interpretation or labeling for a later time to allow for reflection. Educators can revisit the stories they've collected to add labels, details, and analysis to their documentation. Some labels may make sense to add right away. For example, student names, educator names, or perhaps another label that describes a type of play or interaction you may be tracking. For example, students' ability to enter into play. Labels based on the 4 frames may make more sense to add later after some reflection. Often it is easier to see the whole picture, the many types of learning for the various students involved, after some time has passed.
To add a label, simply click on the 3 dots to click on Add Label. Here we will add the student's name, Susan. Letitia is also involved in this story, so I'll click her name as well.
By using student names as labels, we have a quick tool to ensure that our documentation is equitable. If I click on Jason's label, I see that I have a few notes already saved. When I click on Julie's label, I make a note to focus on her play and transitions the very next day.
Once your note is complete, you can set reminders for yourself with this icon to revisit the notes at a later time. It could be at the same time every week, for example, during your prep time. You can also easily share your note with other educators or parents by clicking on Collaborators. You can add their email, or if you have their name in your contact list, by their name. Once you have completed your notes, you can also decide to archive them so that you are not inundated with notes. You can always recall them easily by using the labels on the side or by searching the date in your title.
Thank you for learning alongside us, and best of luck with all your pedagogical documentation.